There we go. We are live, and I'm hoping it's recording. I followed all the little instructions, and it says I'm live, and I can stop broadcasting at any time. I've just got to figure out how to leak to our instructor when we're done. But yeah, I've done it before. It's just been a while since I've done it.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Alrighty, so let's go ahead and we'll start with a prayer. Does anybody want to volunteer?
I can.
I was going to say,
who did
it last?
Yeah, I'll do it.
I did it last time.
Okay, I'll do it next week.
Oh, perfect. That should be great. Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, we're so very thankful for this opportunity we have to be here together. We're thankful for the opportunity we have to learn and to grow. Please bless that we might be able to do Thy will and to be able to communicate and learn from each other. And we love Thee so very much, dear Heavenly Father. And we ask for Thy Spirit to be with us. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Thank you for that prayer. Hey, I just have to say that I had a difficult time doing this week's lesson because of office politics. There's a lot of office politics where I work, and I don't like them at all. And so doing this and reading about it, I was like, oh, I hate this one, but it's a good one. It's a good one
to learn from.
I'm just gonna to kind of I've seen it enough and I understand it enough. I was not a manager. I was more of a supervisor for a group of people for a while, for about 2 years, and it wasn't too bad. I had a good group of guys that I supervised, and it wasn't too bad. I treated them as adults. They treated me as adults, and so we went pretty good. But in this case, we've got two people. Basically, it kind of boils down to a player that doesn't really go into it too much. Thomas Green, young kid, starting up big, made some serious. I got a serious promotion, kind of moved up, and then he kind of started down a different path. The way I read it, and we can discuss this and see if it's how you interpreted it too, but he started down a different path. His manager, which really don't think cared for him too much, kind of wanted him to go a different path totally. And when that happened, there was some conflict between the two. They continued on, and it did not get rectified. And now he is on the verge of losing his job. And so that's a very quick synopsis of what. So let's go ahead and get started. Cynthia, we'll go ahead and get started with you. What do you think were the key issues in this case? What were some of the key issues?
From what I read, I thought. Now, I don't have the names in front of me. I meant to bring all the papers.
Okay, Thomas Green was the
young
guy, and Frank was the manager, the boss.
Thomas got promoted. Frank would have chosen someone else, and then what was the lady's name again?
McDonald. Is her last name?
McDonald.
Yeah, Shannon McDonald. Just kind of trusted too much his potential. I mean, he probably did really have the potential she wanted, but not the experience, obviously. But I felt like both of them should have, because he was promoted, an extra step, both of them should have done more, not modeling, what do you call it? Having him follow people around. I had the word in my essay, I think, but he should have been following people around and kind of mirroring them and watching.
Shadowing,
yeah, that's the word. He could have shadowed for a week or two. It didn't sound like they gave him the resources he needed to learn how to do the sales projections, getting the data he needed to figure those out so that he could create the strategies. But you have to learn how to do it. And so it looked like I was assuming just from what I read, that he was doing whatever he could, not knowing how to do it. And then his first, I guess, write-up or the email that she sent, or that he sent, or that Frank sent about Thomas and the goals.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading the goals; they weren't even applicable to his abilities to create strategies on paper. To document what he kept saying was in his head. But I just thought more time, because of his inexperience, more time could have and should have been spent letting him shadow, letting him learn, giving him some training, or showing him more how to do it. And that was my recommendation, even months later. Go back to square one and start over that way. Or he would have been fired. So, because he was just kind of going on the fly, thinking he was good enough already. But he
Okay.
just had the potential. He wasn't there yet.
He wasn't quite there yet. And what did you think?
So rephrase the question one more time, just so that I make sure I'm doing justice.
Just what do you think the key issues were with this?
Gotcha.
What was the key issues with this case?
So I actually felt like because Green had pushed so hard for this position, he should have reached out and tried to work with the people around him. I agree with Cynthia that he didn't have enough experience and he should have shadowed more, but I think that's his own fault because he had pushed so hard for that position. He should have worked to follow Davis and all of that stuff, because McDonald told him specifically in the beginning. She was like, hey, a lot is resting on you. Let me see if I can find exactly what she says real quick. So she says, Tom, you're walking into a tricky situation with Frank Davis. Frank had expected to choose the new senior market specialist, and it would not have been you. You'll have to deal with any fallout that might result from that. You are getting an unusual opportunity with this promotion. Don't let me down. And so I think she had warned him, like, first off, you need to get on Davis's good side because he's not going to like you. Second off, she had talked to him before, and she was like, I have a couple of reservations about your lack of managerial experience. You have only held sales roles, blah, blah, blah. The new job will require you to think strategically. I am hoping you compensate for your lack of experience by seeking out guidance from some of our more seasoned managers. So she said that to him.
Okay. Yeah.
And told him to do that, and he did not. So I have to agree, Cynthia, like, he should have shadowed people.
Yeah, he should.
But that's his own fault that he didn't do that, because in the business world, like, you have to take care of yourself. And maybe that's me just being really, really critical, but that's, I mean, I appreciate his motivation to try and prove himself in just doing it by himself, but because he doesn't have any sort of experience with that, he should have gone to Davis. And even when he was looking at the numbers and was like, Davis is incorrect. He's way too positive, and like, these numbers aren't possible. Like, he should have talked to Davis and been like, why do you think these are the way they are?
Yes.
Rather than, nope, that's not possible. So that was kind of my thoughts on the case. So he should have gone to Davis. He should have listened to Davis and to McDonald are the like issues of the case. And then even if he had made the mistake at first, at least by the first meeting when Davis was like, hey, these are my issues with you, he should have been like, oh, okay, I gotta shape up. So he just was being too, I don't know, like, high and mighty. I don't know what the correct terminology would be for that. Like, thinking he was
very
better.
Confident. Like,
cocky.
He thought, cocky. There we go.
Yeah.
I wrote my paper. I wrote it to consult with Shannon as far as what she could and should have done, not from, I guess, Thomas's point of view, or not from as far as what she could do now that they got to this point mainly to not destroy his future career, because firing him would,
Yeah.
I was trying to find a success plan for starting now. And if he didn't do it, that then for sure that would be on him.
Gotcha.
So one of the things that I read, and I kind of read in between it, and so I'm probably inferring way too much into this, but one of the reasons why I think that Davis put such an emphasis on trying to the real crux was that Green thought that it was too much, that they couldn't make the meetings, and he was kind of being set up to failure. This was what I was interpreting, that he was being set up for failure. There was like a 10% increase that he needed to do. He didn't think there was any way to be able to do it. He thought that the hotels, and that was notice was that they had brought up in it was that the automobiles or the rental car agencies were only like 5%. And I think that Green was hoping that he would try to develop that and bloom that more. And if he could, that would be the 10% that he was hoping to get out of it by doing that. Granted, all this took place. As I was reading, I was kind of like, "Well, this is crazy because you do this on your phone now." Then I was looking at it; it was all done in 2007, before cell phones really became as prominent as they are now. That was one of the things. But looking at it, like you said, I think it was, I can't remember who said, but they talked about how the first, when they sit down and had the first meeting with your boss, and your boss was like, "Yeah,
that's what
you're
I was
messing
hung up
up."
on.
You at that point you have to, because what he was doing was he was trying to do the thing and trying to develop some software and some other different stuff, and it wasn't, I don't think it was, it may have worked, but he was so devoted into that he wasn't doing what his boss wanted him to do.
Well, he didn't even address in that email where he described their 4 goals. He didn't even address, or Frank Davis didn't address what I thought were the main concerns with his abilities, the way he was accomplishing his tasks. So he wanted him to, but I don't have paper in front of me. He wanted him to report back more about where he was going. It didn't say, I want you to learn how to create strategies using data. Like, he wasn't, the specifics of what he wanted him to improve on were about attitude, about reporting where he was, and stuff that I didn't think were the main. I mean, those were issues, but they weren't the main issues with how he was fulfilling his job. Or, I need you to ask me more questions about how to do things. He didn't even put that in there.
That's a really good point.
That's what changed my whole perspective on how I wrote my recommendation, which is why I wrote it to Shannon. As far as hi.
Hey, Perla.
Hi.
Hey, Perla. We'll catch up real quick. We're just talking about kind of going over the kind of just doing a real quick synopsis on our case study with Thomas Green. Okay, great. I'm glad to have you here. So let's go ahead and just talk about some of the key players. Let's talk about those 3 key players. What do you think Frank Davis was? If you were to meet him, how would you describe him? Frank Davis. He was the manager. He was Thomas Green's boss or manager. But Anna, what do you think he was like as a person?
I think he's very exacting, and he's had a lot of experience, and so he expects a lot from people. I would say if he is any kind of leader, going back to the beginning, and now I can't remember what they're called. He's the one that sets a high standard and expects everyone else to follow behind him. And so I think he expects a lot from his people. I thought Cynthia's point was really interesting that she had just made, where she was like, he addressed some issues that he had, but they probably weren't the main issue. They were the things that were just bugging Davis about Green, which I thought that was interesting.
The personality conflict part and the management's, the supervisor part, where he wasn't reporting enough on where he was or when his meetings were or when he was gone, or like he changed. He went a day earlier to one meeting, and so he came back, or I guess he didn't come back, but
yeah.
So just issues like that. It was more the supervisor issues rather than his work ability. But then his next complaints were about he just can't do it. thinking,
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
even know if he was told he couldn't do it.
well,
But I mean, not formally.
I do think that the things that he was asking him to do, that data would have helped him be able to see if
Oh yeah,
Thomas was actually being successful. So maybe it is an
yes.
okay thing because like
No,
it is
those should have
giving
been
him that
included.
information.
They should have been
So
included, just not all by themselves. That's what I thought. He should have added and here's what you need to do to learn how to do the job. Like that should have been on there too. Because it wasn't. So that's their first meeting, and he's not even told by his supervisor. Somebody else mentioned it. I don't even know if they mentioned it to him, but so I think he just thought it was a personality conflict. He was doing it wrong, and he was cocky. It sounds like, but he wasn't even written up about it. So
Right.
about not getting the data or not learning how to do the spreadsheets or whatever system they use to crunch their numbers.
Hey, Petra, I've got a niece that's
Perla,
named Petra. So, Petra,
Perla.
um,
Perla,
Perla, what did you think of? Kind of describe Thomas Green to us a little bit. What did you think he was like?
I think um, he was a person who learned from the problems because even though there were some troubles, he tried to understand and analyze what was the problem to be able to face it with by talking to the others. So, for example, in McDonald's, I remember that I was reading that he didn't know what to do, and he started thinking what was the right decision to talking with David. Uh, so yeah, that's what I think. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
No, I understand. I
Yeah.
understand. So, that's some good points. I think Green was excited. He was new. He had been given this power, and I think he kind of went too much with it. I think he wanted to kind of go too fast, and he thought he could do more than what I think he really thought he could do. So, any other comments on Green? What kind of insights you thought you could kind of pick up from him?
I thought that it was interesting in this in the building relationships, one-on-one work relationships. It says, "On whom are you dependent, and who is dependent on you?" And I think
yeah,
he was mostly focusing on McDonald and didn't
yeah,
focus at all on Davis. And I think that was a mistake that he made. So he was trying to impress the top boss, but he kind
yeah.
of ignored his middle boss or his direct supervisor.
Well, she kind of let him know
Right.
when she said he didn't really want to hire you. I think he just kind of may have dismissed trying to impress that one, kind of like, oh, this is a lost cause. So I'll just try to reach out to her instead. But
So, in my work experience, I've actually seen this happen quite a few times, and luckily not in my group, but I have seen where somebody has. Hey, can you guys see me? Did my camera get shut off?
No, we can see you.
Okay, good. Just wanted to double check. So, one thing that I've actually seen is when a new manager is promoted into an already established
yeah,
group that's working, that sometimes they will want to bring their own people in. Not that they
mm-hmm.
don't trust, but they're just used to working with these other people, and so they will actually take them and kind of move the people who he has out and move people he knows in. And when he does that, or when he or she does that, we call it building a kingdom, where they're actually trying to build something
Building a
that
kingdom.
they want. And it's kind of sad because the people who are in there may have been functioning well, but under the new manager, they're not functioning now because the new manager doesn't trust them. So yeah, it's kind of hard. I've seen it happen quite a few times. I kind of feel bad about it because now because I just think they need, as part of a manager, you need to be able to work with what you have. You should not be trying to bring in somebody new or trying to bring in your own people. You should be working with what you have. I mean, we should all be looking for the best people, but then we should also be having what we have. Okay, the last person in this we kind of just need to talk about is Sharon. That's the Sharon Davis. What do you think her role was with this? What could she have done better? What was her from the start? Actually, let's start. What about, was it wise for her to hire this guy in the first place? To hire Thomas? Okay, Cynthia, what do
I
you
was gonna
think?
say I don't think so. I don't think so
What do you
because
think? What do you think her key point was for to hire him?
I think she was kind of blinded by and allowed his enthusiasm and his potential, which he probably does have, to kind of affect what she was going to do. And if she was going to supervise him, that might have been okay. But to hand him off to somebody who didn't want to hire him, and he wasn't experienced, that's wrong. That was kind of like a guarantee for failure, in my opinion, unless he had done the job before. But he hadn't. He'd only been, the account specialist. So I had a funny situation at work a couple months ago. The accountant was promoted to the assistant director, but one other lady applied for the job, and before she went to her interview, one other lady in our department applied for the job. Before she went to the interview, she said, "I'm so scared." And I was like, "You've been here 30 years. Why are you scared?" I'm the new one, but she said, "Well, I don't know. I just don't know what to say. I haven't had an interview in a long time." And she's going on and on. And so I said, "Well, I know what you can tell him." She did get the job, but I said, "You're the only one here that knows how to do the bids, the contracts, and all the things that I do." I mean, I know she would be supervising like the whole building if she became the assistant director, or helping supervise the whole building, not just a few. But the other lady applying for the job is a food supervisor and doesn't know anything about any of those things, and the accounting and all the other things this lady's been involved in. So you just have to create a case for yourself, because I was really scared that the other lady would get the job because she was friends with the director and the other people, more friends. So I kept thinking, oh, if she becomes my supervisor over bids, this is going to be bad. Because she didn't know anything about it and had never worked on them. So I was afraid, especially not being the supervisor, but being the employee that would be supervised, that if we don't get somebody in that position that knows how to do what I do, then I would have somebody telling me what to do that didn't even know how to do it, if that makes sense.
Yes,
So
it does.
she did get the job, but I said, you can walk in there confidently and say, "You're the only one here who knows how to do all the food and equipment bids and contracts and all that." And she said, "Oh." I said, "Well, just don't forget to say that,
because that's the selling point.
Because that was the part I was worried about. If they brought the other lady in, and I didn't know if anyone outside had applied who did know how to do all that, but as far as in-house employees, I knew this lady would be the best one, at least in my opinion. But she got the job. But I was really worried about the other one because she would just be guessing, and it just in talking to her, every time I try to explain, she's like, "Oh no, I don't know anything about it." I'm like, you probably shouldn't go around explain, Anyway.
Okay. All right. Okay. So Anna, what did you think of
Shannon?
Shannon, yeah.
I'm looking at what she said again, and she's like, she's willing to take a chance on him because she thinks the group needs a fresh perspective. So I can understand why she hired him, and maybe why she didn't give him a lot of go follow someone, because she wanted a fresh perspective. But at the same time, now that Cynthia brought that up, she did kind of just set him up for failure, because she didn't really give him I don't know, he hadn't never been in a experience like that. And she should have given him some sort of guideline. So so I don't think he should have been hired unless she was willing to work with him more.
He still could
Yeah, I
shadow
think there was.
people and then bring his perspective in later. You know, like he still needs
So,
to learn the job, and then.
so the one of the things that it kind of stood out to me was that there was a point in there where they talked about that he was at the University of Mississippi or one of the colleges he came from was her alma mater. And so I
Georgia.
think Georgia. Okay. Yeah. And I think so, you always kind of want to, I see that a lot where I work. People want to bring in the same, and they'll actually have graduate from a school. They'll have those people be the recruiters to go and try to bring in other college, bring in college kids for it. And bias going into it, I think she had a really strong bias that I think may have not suited the three as well as it could have. But since you've kind of since she did that, I think she should have put more energy, more time into, when she got the first email that said that there was an issue, she should have brought both of them in, set both of them down at that point, and said, "Let's discuss this." That was my take on it.
Mm.
And also, I think she was like listening.
Go ahead.
And she was always listening to babies, and maybe she should try to talk with both at the same time. I don't know, like to try to discuss the problems between them, because she was just listening from one side, and then she sent the email to Green telling him what was going on. I don't know. I feel like she needed to put more leadership and try to discuss everything with both of them, understand both situations.
That is very wise. I had a bishop tell me one time that I was a clerk, and he just said that he would never, when he'd bring a couple into counseling for counseling problems, he'd bring them in separately, have them air their concerns, and then together and have them talk together. He says there's always two sides to every story, and if you don't get them both, he says the first part was just to kind of let them vent, to get it out of their system on what had happened. But he said the true counseling started. He said a lot of times he said I'd look like I was taking notes, and I was actually putting together a grocery list or a to-do list that I wanted to do at home. And he said then he'd bring them both in and set them down, and that chance for them to vent helped, but also to get both perspectives on them. And that's what I don't think she got. I don't think she got that she really could have. And to me, the true one that, I think none of them were faultless, and I think we'll talk about that at the conclusion. But I don't think none of them were faultless. Everybody had a good position to blame on that. So yeah, I think so. I'm just kind of going down the list on the second on what they've done. So we have also been reading 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and there's a quadrants in there where it talks about 4 different quadrants, or quadrants was 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if we look at that, kind of keep that in, how do you think each one of these people dealt with the stress from the people in this group, or this situation that was going on? Starting first with Sharon McDonald. How do you think she was she handling it? And if she was handling it, what quadrant do you think she would be in, and why? So does anybody want to start that?
I can't remember. I remember the quadrant, but I listened to it 2 or 3 times on my way to and from work. Then I looked at the quadrants at home, but I don't remember what's in the quadrants right now.
Okay, so 1 is you're always on crisis. It's like, oh my word, my house is on fire, my hair's on fire. Number 2 is I'm planning, I'm developing, I'm working with stuff. I'm making sure that if I do have a crisis, I plan for it. Number 3, I try to explain number 3. Number 4 is like you see a crisis, but you ignore it and walk away from it and go do something else. Go play on the computer instead of actually working on the crisis. And I can't remember what number 3 was.
Wasn't it like always focusing on like the things that were urgent, but not like, so the things that were like busy work. So you're always doing busy work and kind of ignoring the.
Okay, that sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty
something
pretty
like
right.
that.
Okay, so what quadrants do you think people were in, and why? Petra, what quadrant do you think people were in? And there's no right or wrong answer because I think they're kind of all flowed in.
I usually have my book with me. Sorry.
I've got mine over here.
Can you repeat it, please?
Yeah. So, what quadrant was Green, Davis, and McDonald in? Were they in kind of there's quadrant one is like the crisis zone where everybody's, management by crisis. They don't really do anything unless it is a crisis. Number two is where you're planning, and so if a crisis does come, they can handle it pretty well because they plan for these type of events. Number three is what was that again, Ann? What did you say? I kind of thought it was
they were doing the busy work, but not really.
Not productive. Wasn't right. Not the. And then number four is ignoring all of the important stuff and dealing with kind of the mundane, non-important stuff that you need to do. So, where do you think people were, and why?
I think the third one too, because they were actually trying to get results for the market, and they were trying really to work, but I don't know. I feel like they didn't understand each other, so that's what I feel. It's the third one.
That's actually a really good point. That is a really, truly a good point. That I don't think they understood each other at all. I think yeah. So I want to come back to that when we do our conclusion. I want to come back to that. But
they have like different expectations from each other too. I feel like that, and but both of them wanted to do a really good job. So
to kind of build on that. Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah.
To kind of build on that with what Cynthia was saying, where Davis was expecting like the reports and all that kind of stuff. I think that kind of goes along with what Perla was saying, that they expected the busy work to. Davis was trying to get the busy work done and wasn't really focusing on the urgent thing, which was he doesn't understand how he can reach the goal that Davis has set.
Or how the others are handling, the part that he doesn't get, the part that he's got in his head that he keeps saying, and whether he does or not, nobody knows.
Right.
But he's doing the busy work and not focusing on the most important thing at that time. Or Thomas is what I was thinking. I don't know where
Thomas
Frank.
I think Frank is in 3 as well. That's what I felt like too.
And Shannon was in the one where she's ignoring.
Yeah, kind of doing number 4. Kind of doing, yeah, exactly. I think there was a crisis here brewing, and she really didn't do much with it.
Like, it'll resolve itself. I hear people say that. It's like.
Oh, we lost her for a minute.
Declined it.
Oh, we lost you for a second, Cindy. Sorry about that.
Okay. It's okay.
So you were saying we lost you. So you were saying.
She was ignoring the crisis.
Yeah.
She wasn't focusing on it, and she was assuming it would resolve. I just said I hear people say that all the time. Oh, it'll work itself out. And sometimes I'm thinking, you don't know that. You can't keep ignoring a problem, hoping it'll work itself out if nothing is being done to help.
I had a manager exactly that. He had a really dysfunctioning team, a lot of backbiting and fighting, and he was just for like 2 years just figuring, it'll work itself out. It'll work itself out. And it's like, no, if it was like a 2-week thing, yeah, it might work itself out, but it's still not functioning, and it's been 2.5 years. I think you need to do something with this.
Yeah.
So good. Those are all really good points. Those are good points. I think we can bring that up. Alrighty, let's go ahead and Uh, okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the where to, where do you think it's going to end now? Where do you think, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? Who wants to start? Who wants to think what's going to happen next? Give their point.
Well, it's hard to know since we don't know his true abilities. We're just reading about what somebody thought about his, excitability and his, how he was a go-getter with his as an account specialist. But if he did have the intelligence and the drive to learn what he needed to learn to be successful, then that was my first suggestion, to give him 60 days rather than 30 or 60 to 9, work out an actual positive plan to help him learn how to do the job. And then if he still can't, I recommended that he would be demoted to the position between and not fired, because it wasn't his fault that, well, he wanted the job, but people do that all the time. But to give him a chance to prove himself one step down could help him be successful in the long run. And I'd almost want to do that right away, because he probably did have the ability to do that job.
Yeah, or the job he came from.
Yeah. But since he was doing good at that first job and that next job was actually open, he could. But didn't they say the middle job was open?
I don't think
There's a
so.
senior
I don't
account
think
specialist.
so.
Oh, I thought. Why did I think that? The senior. Yeah. Oh, because. Wait, there was account specialist and then senior. No, there was a market specialist and senior market specialist. I thought the market specialist position was open.
No. I think.
No? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, my suggestion was to bring him back to that level, the level in between, somehow, and
gotcha.
And let him grow into the position like he should have. Try, at least to try it, because you don't know. He bought a house. I mean, just on the fact that he got hired, he was so excited. He did a lot of stuff. So rather than destroy him, I thought they should take steps to, since they also were part of the mistake, they should try to help find a better solution. So whatever that was.
Okay. So don't fire him, demote him. Okay. And what did you think? What was your view? What would you have done?
So I think I'm a little more aggressive and not as forgiving, because I was like, fire him. It was his own fault. Like, he wanted the job. He didn't do anything to fix it. He didn't listen to McDonald or Davis, and so he shouldn't have that job. But so that's what my thought was. But Cynthia makes some really good points, and so I'm kind of like, I should probably be tempered a little bit. But I think, to be honest,
I have boys that age, so
it's very personal to you.
I was looking at it like, and I'll tell you a story soon about one of them that happened a month ago that I used in my essay. So
yeah, but I do think that the end result is that he's going to get fired, because he doesn't have any data to back himself up, and Davis does have data, even though it may not be the correct kind of data. Like, it's like data that focuses on other stuff. He still has data, and he's the one that has talked to McDonald. And Davis, once he got the job, I don't think he really kept in contact with McDonald. So that's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Perla, what did you think? How did you think it's going to end?
Yeah, I think that it's going to. I think Thomas Green is going to be fired too, because Davis is really serious about his decision. In his last email, he says that he even set a time to get the material from him, and he's not going. If he doesn't get that, I feel like he's already very mad about all this situation, and he's going to decide to fire him. And I feel like he's just going to let Shannon know about it, and Shannon is going to tell Thomas Green that he's going to be fired with that. I don't know, but I think there is not like other option for Thomas Green more than try to hurry in everything. But I feel like he's going to be fired too at the end.
Yeah, which sucks.
Oh, it is. It is. Okay, so let me go ahead and we have kind of the Paul Harvey version of the rest of the story they asked me to share. Okay, so after McDonald on February 25th, 2008, emailed Green, she took an offense against his boss. She crafted a series of memorandums, emails, reports, and projections that accuracy of the creative forecasting.
Oh wait, you were given extra information?
Yes, I was. You get this too. So, who's doing this next week, by the way?
I think Perla is.
Perla is. So Perla at the bottom of this week's where it talks about it, down at the bottom, there's a thing for you to prepare for next week, and it gives you a little bit extra data. And so take that and read it. Like I said, this gives us the conclusion, and like I said, the kind of the Paul Harvey rest of the story. Yeah. The data that was enabled Green to build an allied with other marketing. Hang on, let me back up. I missed some spot. He crafted a series of memorandums, emails, and reports and projections that expose the inadequacy in the creative forecasting. Remember the first part of this, the creative forecasting was that he said that they could grow at 5%, which when I read it the first time, I was thinking, okay, if he does hit the what was those, the rental agencies, the car rental agencies, they might be able to pick this around. But this data enabled Green to build some allies with other marketing personnel who used the data to ultimately side with him. On April 4th, it was announced that Frank Davis had been moved laterally to an undefined special project.
Frank Davis was?
However, Davis was moved to a undefined special project, which where I work, when people get moved, when managers get moved to a special project, it's basically, we're moving you to a special project for you to find another job. You've got some time to find a job because you're not doing anything else. Oof. Okay. Yeah. Green's tactics were seen to be overly brutal by many in the company. And although he won the battle against his boss, his career was harmed. Distanced herself from him, and he announced that he was resigning from his position. And she said that she distanced himself from him, and by July of 2008, he announced that he was resigning from his position to pursue a full-time study in an MBA. Oof. So that's what happened. So as we're doing this, I'm kind of looking at this all going, Shannon was the key to this. I mean, it's kind of soap operas. It was really kind of a soap opera with this, but I really think the cause and the problems really fall back on Shannon, Shannon McDonald.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Because I've seen it much too soon, and she shouldn't. Even if he wanted it, of course. I mean, go-getters do that. They try their hardest to get promoted as fast and high as they can. And that doesn't mean they should be.
Yeah, and Davis, she knew that Davis was expecting to be able to fill that position as well. So that's kind of like on her too.
That was wrong of her. Yeah, she should have worked with him.
Yeah, like I said, when I read all this, I kind of, when I did my first initial read, I thought, well, Green is the kind of the scapegoat, the one, but when it really rolls down to it, I thought Shannon, she was the one that failed of all the three of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then she didn't even live up to, like, she left him there to fail. She left the situation without, like, helping not micromanaging, just managing it or helping soften the blow or something. But yeah, and then Frank, it was like I thought he was standing by watching, hoping he would fail and didn't give him the information he needed, just complained about his attitude more than his technical abilities. But
yeah, I felt the same way. I felt that he was, you put this guy in, I don't like him. I'm going to do everything I can to get him to fail. I'm going to get him fired, and then I'm going to put my guy that I wanted back in there and go back to the boss and say, see, I told you so. You shouldn't have hired this clown in the first place. You should have let me put my guy in there. And I thought that's what he was running down the road to, and because I really thought he was, the time frame to take him out, and I think there was somewhere where I read in it where he took him really quickly through all of the. It happened really quick. I mean, they spent no time trying to develop any type of relationships with the people that they had met. They just, I'm trying to remember what they said, but.
Here, I'll look it up right now.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. He spent the next, there we go. I found that he spent the next weeks with his boss, Frank Davis, making a rapid tour of major airline industry clients. At the end of the week, Davis told Green, we have some good meetings this week, and the clients responded well. However, I think we're more effective if we had provided the clients with some data marketing. So he took them really quick, met everybody really quick, and then said, oh, hey, go ahead and start doing your job, but give them a whole bunch more data.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Goodness.
So.
Crazy.
Man.
It just sounded like a setup for failure. So.
Yeah.
It really did. And
Frank
unfortunately,
wanted it to fail because he wanted somebody else.
Yep.
So he wasn't going to help the way he should. But.
No. And I mean, I love the way that the church works with things where when the Lord calls somebody, he's already proved them to be that. He knows that they have the capability to do it. And it's not like, I'm going to kind of give an example of if the Lord called a state, or if the Lord called an elders quorum president to a ward, the Lord knows he can do it. The bishop could look at it and say, well, this is my ward. I don't want him to serve in this. I want him to serve. I wanted to call this other brother, and he should have done this, and so I'm not going to help him and support him or anything else. But it still really falls back on the brother who was called by the Lord to go through and do this. And the bishop shouldn't look at it and say, well, I'm going to back out and just let you fail. No, the bishop wanted you into this position. I'm going to help you, and we're going to work together for the betterment of the company. And I looked at that and thought, had this been a ward, and the Davis was the bishop, Green was the elders quorum president, and McDonald was a stake president. I can see that happening, but I can also, say, hey, why didn't you step in and help? That was your first responsibility, was to make sure that everybody succeeded here, not just bring in the person that you wanted.
Yeah.
So, kind of a different perspective on it. Okay. Thoughts? Any other thoughts on this reading that we wanted to talk about? Bring up?
I just thought that handling a situation like that positively, especially by Frank, in a helpful attitude at first, would make Thomas feel more comfortable to ask questions. And one of my sons, well, he took him a long time to graduate. He went to Alaska. He went to Thailand. I mean, he and his wife do adventures, and so he's fine. Then they were in Wisconsin visiting her mom, and then now he came back this summer and got a job finally, like a real job. And so I've been kind of nervous, and so it's in Lehi, Utah, and he was pretty thrilled. But after a couple of weeks, he was thinking, "This is really hard. This is not the same as." all the different things he's doing. And so he did feel comfortable to complain to his supervisor, I'm really worried. This is really hard. It's a lot harder than I thought it would be. And his supervisor said, well, we hired you over hundreds of applicants, so I know you can do it. And I thought, whoa, that was like the perfect thing to say to this particular son. So just to continue the confidence, because I was grateful he felt comfortable telling him, I'm struggling with this kind of, it's a sales position, a good sales position, not one of those. He had to have his degree to get the job, but he's still, it was a really good, just the comment he made back to him, and then, let me help you. I thought, oh, I'm so relieved. So I kind of had that in my head when I was reading this thing, why aren't they being helpful? Why is Frank's like letting him fail and wants him to fail? Didn't want him in the first place. So it's important to, bring in a positive attitude and an open attitude to where the employee feels good and comfortable talking, because maybe Thomas didn't want to talk to Frank about anything because he felt that
Yep.
Shannon set him up by telling him that she maybe shouldn't have.
That's very true.
Because then it was like, oh, I'm not going to talk to him. He doesn't even want me here.
Right.
So that made it harder for him to focus on, the relationship. He already knew it was bad.
That actually reminds me. Sorry, can I tell it this brought in something? So my last missionary companion, my mission president pulled me in before, and usually we didn't know who we were going to be placed with. We had this huge this person is staying there and this person is joining them. So you learn about it when you're there. And he pulled me aside and was like, hey, this missionary, we're putting you with her because she's trouble. We're trying to get her to do all of these things. And that totally biased my opinion against her. And I think it really affected our relationship because I didn't trust her. And she did have trouble and she was troubled, but I think I would have, I knew nothing about her before that until my mission president was like, she's trouble. We're putting you with her to help her do more missionary work. And so I went into it with a totally wrong mindset because you've already seen my mindset. I'm like, well, if it's there's one way and it's my way, I can be pretty, I feel like I can be pretty brutal sometimes. And so I wish, looking back, I'm like, if I could do anything different with that thing, I would have had my mission president not tell me that.
Yeah.
So anyways, because it biased me, and then we were not able to communicate because I was like, oh, I don't need to listen to anything she says because she's trouble. So
it's already proven that she's, no one else can help her.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I thought of.
Cool. That's really interesting because I have the son that's going there to BYU. He was on a mission, and he had right in between, during the middle of his mission, he had a mission president leave and a new one come in. The second one he loved to death, loved his second mission president. The first one he still liked, but not as much as the second one. But same thing happened to him. Mission president brought him in, set him down, said, look, I'm giving you a companion. We're doing everything we can to keep this kid from going home. I need you to work with him. But just understand that I won't be surprised if I get a phone call and he says he's going home.
Okay.
And so my son just said, well, that's it. I'm gonna prove him wrong. I'm gonna, there's no way that this is going to happen to me. And so he took it upon himself, and he said, for the next 2 weeks, he said he was his, just worked with this guy and worked with him and did everything he could just to develop him into the person he was. And the kid, I think, ended up still going home, but it was because of an illness or something like that, not because of his testimony. But my son did it, but he didn't do it in a good reason. He did it because he wanted to spite his mission president. But sometimes that's what happens to us.
Yeah. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Sorry. I have this propped up. Okay.
So any other questions, concerns that we want to do with this?
Perla?
No. I want to add something.
Oh, please.
Yeah, sometimes like we don't know what's going on in each person's life, so always there is a reason. And as you said, in the case of David, he needed to talk to him and try to understand what was going on, not just inside the workplace, but also outside. And yeah, maybe it could help him to get better results. What I think.
I think that's exactly right. Communication would have been the biggest thing that these people could have done, that it would have saved everybody.
That's true. Good, positive communication.
Exactly. Well, any communication, I think, would have helped. I think if they would have been able to, and they're both in a corporate office. Why didn't you just walk down the hall and sit down in front of him instead of sending an email? Walk down the hall and sit down in his office, even though you're the manager. I know a lot of managers at my work will refuse to do that, to walk down the hall and sit in someone's office. They call them to come to me. I guess it's a power thing, but I think you go down, sit down, and say, "Okay, hey, I got to talk to you about this. There's an issue," and I think that they wouldn't have had the situation that they were in. So
yep.
Sad, like I said, sad group all the way around. Okay, so let's go ahead and have a closing prayer, and then if we could, I'll shut off the recording, and then we can talk a little bit about Petra. If you calling you Petra, like I said, I've got a niece that her name is Pete, and it's Petra is what it's short for, and so I'm always have to call you Petra. Is what I'm doing. Are you going to need any help with setting up for next week, doing the live cast?
Yeah, maybe I can. I don't know. Meet any or
yeah. Yep. I am totally willing to help you get that set up.
Okay.
All right.
Good. All right. Does anybody want to say our closing prayer, and then we'll go ahead and get this taken care of, wrap this up for the night? Any volunteers?
I can. And then I have to go into this pharmacy before 6. So 6 o'clock.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and get you so you can get in there.
I drove to. I thought, let me just get there and then. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right. Thanks. Our dear Father in heaven, we're so thankful this evening for the blessing we have to take this class and to learn from BYU Idaho and the wonderful way that we can study and discuss these things together. And we pray for thy Spirit to be with us and help us to understand the concepts that will benefit our personal lives and our future work lives as well. And we pray for thy Spirit to be with us in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Okay. Hey, Anne, before you head off, I'm gonna go ahead. Go ahead. We'll see you, Cynthia.
Sorry, I gotta go. But
bye, Cynthia.
Talk to you next week.
Okay. Bye.
Sounds good.
So where did you put this when you and good, Petra, you're here too, that you can figure out where do I send this to? Do I send it straight to the
so because I opened mine up on YouTube, it's populated on the YouTube channel thing.
Right.
And so I just went back to my YouTube channel and selected it from there and just clicked on the video itself, and it pulled up the YouTube video, and then I just copied that link and then just pasted that link in an
email to our instructor.
Or actually either an email, or there might I think you actually are supposed to do it on the case discussion or something like that.
Oh, put it in there. Oh, okay.
I think so.
Good.
And I think I didn't do that last week, but I emailed it to him. So
I'll put them in both. I'll just do both of them.
Probably a good call. Yeah. So.
Alrighty.
Okay.
Alrighty. Thank you much, guys.
Same time next week?
I'm good with that.
Okay.
It works good for me.
Okay, perfect.
Alrighty.
We'll check with Cynthia, but sweet.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye. Hey, Perla, I'm going to call you also on Hangouts real quick, okay?